You're listening to the I Love You Keep Going podcast with George Haas. For more information, please visit our website at www.mettagroup.org. That's www.mettagroup.org.
So welcome everybody. This is I Love You Keep Going. It is July 7th, 2022 at 7:38 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. I thought really we should just start over since there's been an interruption in the trajectory of what we talk about. A few things have happened, notably the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And the activist court that we currently have. I do always appreciate the sort of right wing's labeling of things. They're completely against an activist court and have campaigned against it. And then, of course, really, it turns out it's just a projection for what they're doing. And then also what's coming up over the summer here at Mettagroup, I thought we could talk a little bit about, just as a refresher. I'll mute everybody.
Recording in progress.
When Roe was put into place, I was still living at home in Chicago, still in high school. It's a long time ago. And I remember being so enthusiastic about it that I dug our American flag out of the closet and I put it out in front of the house. And when my mother came home, she was really curious as to why I had put the flag out. And I said that they had legalized abortion, and that I thought that was terrific. And I grew up in an arch Republican household, and she was unsure about that, but she did have a quality of feeling that women should have equal rights. My grandmother, her mother, used to put it differently. She would say, "Men are stupid." Not you, George, which I thought was hilarious. As she recounted the sorrows of the world, in which men were largely, overwhelmingly in charge of. And so here they are again, doing this thing. And we are in a country that's quite divided. I'm really, this is a meditation format, and really what I mean by talking about this is that we need to find a way to hold space for this without completely rejecting it, or we won't really be able to respond to it in a way that will be helpful. I know that it's easy to just reflexively turn away from this. It's just, it's impossible. It's hopeless. There's nothing that we can really do about it. The dialogue with people who support this view is also impossible because there's no reason, there's no ground that we can share to discuss it. But we still need to be able to hold a space where we can be open to this and open to the people who hold these views and in some way stay relational, or the polarization will deepen. The thing that happens with the polarization that bothers me the most is that it prevents much of anything happening. There are an abundance of solutions to the problems that we have as a culture, and what there isn't is a willingness to implement them. I've been reading about this because I want to be able to have a way of opening into it. And what keeps being described over and over again is this American empire, through the actions of our government, making us less and less competitive, so that the American era is winding down. And what we're seeing is the reflection of that, mainly through inequality. So you have the systematic destruction of public education. You have the change in the tax code that grossly favors the people that are already rich. You have the impoverishing of poor, and you have the stripping of the middle class of resources, and a return really to the unequal systems that preceded the post-war period. One of the things about the Second World War and the blowing up of most of Europe, and then the blowing up of Asia that followed, is that there was a lot of work rebuilding. And then that created this possibility of a capitalist growth economy, which actually, now that most things are rebuilt, we don't really have anymore. And we're returning more to that already built economy where the upper end of the spectrum has most of the resources, and the bottom end doesn't have much. We also have this resilient military policy in this country that really takes the bulk of the money that are raised by taxes. I've just come back from Europe, and one of the things about Europe is that their infrastructure is much better than ours. And it's not a little bit better. It is much, much, much better than what we have here. And the easiest explanation for that is that they don't spend the majority of their federal tax dollars supporting the military. They put it into the development of the physical structure of their countries, so that they have public transportation, they have healthcare, they have public education, they have bullet trains. Have you ever been on a bullet train? You could go from Amsterdam to Paris in a little over 3 hours on a bullet train at 160 miles an hour, and it is smooth. And we have our military. It's a puzzling trade-off that we're willing to tolerate. So here we are, talking about the conditions of the world as we find it, and our place in the world where we are, and what is our responsibility or not our responsibility about this. What ends up happening in the historical view of this, of course, is that when the middle begins to fall away because of the deepening inequality, populist leaders tend to arise, and they can arise either on the left or the right. In our country, because of the history of the suppression of the left, the last time really the left rose up was in the Great Depression, and that was suppressed by our military. But it did result in the Roosevelt years and a realignment of that, which was the shift that allowed the middle class to be preserved and actually developed. Greater education, greater social welfare. But this time around, through the election of Trump and the hard right shift of that side of the aisle, the populist movement that's really arisen has been right wing. We even elected a populist president, and we have the hearings around the January 6th uprising. We don't have a tendency to hold our senior leaders accountable in this country, and we haven't for as long as I can remember. But if something doesn't happen, the system that we have won't hold is my sense of it. So what then do we do? And how do we really, I keep coming back to this over and over again, hold the space for a collaborative dialogue where the definitions and meanings of each side are understood and appreciated, and that we can then collaborate on a solution or solutions so that we can avoid the hardships that this kind of cycle of empire. Everything is impermanent. They arise, they pass. If you add into that, then of course the great technology boom and the climate condition, it is also an unprecedented time in terms of reflecting back on history. The old saying is that people who don't understand and reflect on history are likely to repeat its errors, and people who do have to be patient while the people who don't repeat the errors. So then we would be talking about compassion, right? Compassion practice, that we're actually able to hold the suffering experience of other people. I look at a lot of these presentations, and it looks like a lot of suffering to me. A sense of joyfulness from the sympathetic joy or the mudita practice in everybody doing well, everybody pursuing their exploration and the things that matter to them, and supporting that. This loving kindness practice where we view people with this great expansive kindness. And at the same time, when we recognize that harm is being done, see if we can't in some way prevent the harming from happening. So that's the tall order of our practice in this environment. Is that making sense? We all create conceptual reality based on our conditioning, and conditioning varies quite a bit. The experiences that we have vary quite a bit. So we can come into from this place of understanding the difficulty that certain people have in coming up into their adult lives, and then how they respond to that. So around here, we like to talk about that in terms of attachment theory and attachment work, seeing if we can move out of the restrictions of our early conditioning into a place where we can actively explore things that provide a meaning, an essential meaning to us as we live on the planet. And then to support each other in each of us pursuing this capacity to explore and find meaning. It seems to me, as I look at these things unfolding, that what's often represented is a despair that people have about not being able to find this essential meaning, and also not being able to hold their own obligation or responsibility to find what's meaningful to them, and looking to assign that responsibility or project that responsibility onto other people. You know, I grew up gay in the Midwest in the 50s and 60s, and it was actually physically dangerous to let anybody know that as a young person. And because of that, I've always felt restricted in where I could live, and I've always lived in places that were relatively safe to be expressive of that. So Chicago, New York, Los Angeles. I don't think that my particular subgroup of our culture is going to do that well as these changes roll out. Certainly none of the protected groups that we have added to our open family of this country are constitutionally protected in a traditional interpretation of that. And when I was in my 20s, homosexuality was illegal in all 50 states. You could be evicted without any repercussions. You could be fired without any repercussions. You could be beat up or killed on the street, and a viable defense was homosexual panic, that the person who beat you or killed you was frightened of the specter of it. And I don't really want to go back to that. And so it does cause me consternation how that's going to roll out. And I'm pessimistic about actually how it's going to go. So we practice metta, we practice karuna, we practice mudita, we practice upekkha, and then we keep our voices loud in response to this. One of the things about using anger as a resource to propel you into responding to this is that it burns you out, and it burns you out fast, way faster than the amount of resistance that we're going to need to respond. And so if you can shift into the compassion side, the loving kindness side, the joyfulness side, you'll last longer. That's one of the other reasons why I think it's so essential to do that. You'll be able to resist as long as we need to resist in order for this to change again. Everything is impermanent. This will rise, this will pass. We will be able to push again into something different. So that's my thoughts about that. So what we're doing around here is on Saturday, we're starting a new level 1 series. If you're interested in the attachment stuff, this is a sort of, well, we tend to go into it. The level 1 is a sort of broad survey of what actually the attachment work is and how we do it. So that's 3 day longs over Saturdays coming up. And then we're going to do an I Love You, Keep Going, which is focused mainly on the collaborative relationship system. So our formulation for the attachment work is the three-pillar approach that Dan and David Elliott developed with his group, their group. Ideal parent figure is the first pillar. The second pillar is mentalizing, and the third pillar is the psychoeducation around attachment and collaborative relationship systems. And so the level one is mainly focused on the psychoeducation of what attachment is, how to develop mentalizing through the use of metta vipassana, and then also collaborative relationship systems, and then an introduction to the ideal parent figure work. We do a level two, which we also have coming up this summer, which is a deeper dive into that, where we really develop the ideal parent figure protocol, the beginning part of it, work through the mentalizing and what mentalizing is and what needs to happen, and then really work on the collaborative relationship systems. Level three, you can do at any time, which is the one-on-one attachment work. We do like you to have an adult attachment interview for that so that we can track what needs to happen. Once you earn security, then level four is really looking at the adult relationship patterns and seeing if there's anything there that needs to be shifted, which we would use ideal parent figure for. We have a level five, which is for people who are in existing couples that need help in renegotiating the attachment relationships. One of the things that happens when you do the attachment work is it shifts your standing attachment understanding with your partner, and sometimes there needs to be additional support there to help renegotiate the terms of that agreement. Fingers crossed. And we're developing a level 6, but it's not ready for rollout yet, which is advanced mentalizing. And that's really once you get the attachment stuff, which we consider the preliminary practices, out of the way, we move then into the advanced mentalizing, which is really the on the enlightenment track. So we want you to do the attachment work if you need to do it, and then jump into the enlightenment track. I think that that might also be helpful to all of us if we have more and more people who can see clearly the nature and purpose of the human condition. I was quite saddened by that rollback, quite fearful of what might come next. When I was in Paris just a week ago or so, and I went to the Sacred Heart Basilica, which is on the top of Montmartre. I don't know if you've seen it, but in the back of the basilica is this massive mosaic of Jesus. And it really depicts this patriarchal view of the world. Jesus at the top, or God is at the top, and everyone falling beneath. But when you looked at the who was depicted in the mosaic, you saw the Pope kneeling, and Saint Joan of Arc kneeling, and the Virgin Mary kneeling, and all of the royals that were in power at the time kneeling, and all of the saints kneeling, and there's this whole hierarchy perfectly depicted in this giant mosaic. And I was struck by the patriarchal nature of it and these layers of authority. You know, we live in this country that was inhabited, estimates 100 million people maybe in this continent. I don't know how accurate these estimates are, but it was a hunter-gatherer society, which was really a council-based, community-based form of government and not hierarchical. So when you live in a patriarchy where the view is that the patriarchy is the only system that really works, and yet we inhabit a continent that for millennia was not that, but it's completely discounted. The ownership of the land was collective, not individual, and so when our European ancestors came over, they didn't value the collective ownership. They instead interpreted it as if the land were not owned, and so that they could then take it. Mainly, I think that the collapse of what was here was through the novel diseases that created a pandemic, so that there wasn't actually enough in the way of survivors to hold that space. But when you look into the nature of those societies and how they regulated the population uh, based on the resources that were available, and that was constantly changing. And there was no ultimate patriarchal authority that controlled everything. It's more community based, more council based. We can see actually that there are examples of enduring systems that are not the one that we have. So I think that we can also be quite open in terms of our thinking about this. And that's also something that I would like to offer, is that we begin to, as we think of solutions for what's coming, that we be quite open about it and not necessarily think that what we have is the only option. I remember growing up in school, and I'm paraphrasing this because I can't quite remember it, but democracy is a terrible system in government, except that it's better than all of the other systems. Can you remember that comment? But certainly we should be able to come up with a system that includes all of us, so that we all can pursue this goal of finding meaning in our lives in the terms that make sense to us, as long as those terms aren't violating everybody else. But I'm quite hopeful actually about that, because that seems to be more the innate quality of what this human condition is. That makes sense. So what I thought would make sense was to do some metta practice for difficult people. It's funny, when you think of difficult people, I normally think of people who won't do what I want them to do, or what I think they should do. That's what makes them difficult. But if you step back a little bit from that, really at a deeper level, the interaction with them creates dysregulation in me. So something about the way that their being, which is without any evaluation of it, when it interacts with the way that I tend to be, it creates a dysregulation rather than it being neutral or being pleasant. So really, it's very difficult to do much about your conditioning. It's very difficult for somebody else to do much about their conditioning. And so you tend to gravitate toward people who make you feel better. And that's this unconscious emotional regulation system that happens between people. And so people who are difficult tend to be dysregulating. It may be that it isn't all of the creative narrative structures that we create about them that makes them difficult, but just that our systems don't integrate very well. But let's do some metta for a difficult person, see how that goes. Any comments or questions before we begin? Okay. So go ahead and take your meditation posture. How'd that go? Ready to resist? Good. So we are, as I said earlier, starting the level 1 on Saturday. We're doing it a little differently, but maybe not. Let's look. So we'll have the first one on the 9th, and then the second one on the 23rd, and then the third one on the 6th of August. And then on the 20th of August, we'll have the relational class. And then the first level 2 class is starting in September. I do also have a retreat coming up October 1st through 8th at the retreat center in the Sierras. There's some places left in that. I know it's challenging with the COVID stuff, but hopefully it'll settle down a little bit by then. And then we're going to take a group to Asia in February, and it looks like we might be going to Vietnam to do some practice there and tour around Ho Chi Minh City way and then up to Hanoi. So that would be for 3 weeks, and then that's what's coming up. I offer this class on a dana basis. Dana is the Pali word for donation, or generosity. So I hope you would consider that. It helps support me and also the work that Mettagroup is doing. Very nice to see you. The question is, what time is the level 1, which is it's at 9 to 4. I will see you soon, I hope, somewhere along the way. Bye now.
Thanks, George.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks.